All right, so we're doing Sri Nisargadatta's I Am That, and we're on section 14, the appearances and the reality. And this is the
Anand,
big
will you mute
difference.
us, please?
Yes, ma'am. Let's see here. Okay. So if you have anything to say, again, I always say it because I don't. I know that I ramble on a lot, but I always want you to feel like you can say, ask, add, question, challenge, anything you like. And so if you need to or want to, just unmute and let us know. No shyness necessary. All right. Oh, here comes Ritu. All right. So appearances and the reality. Questioner, repeatedly, you have been saying that events are causeless. A thing just happens and no cause can be assigned to it. Surely everything has a cause or several causes. How am I to understand the causelessness of things? So Maharaj says, well, from the highest point of view, the world has no cause. Questioner, but what is your own experience? Maharaj, everything is uncaused. The world has no cause. And this is a very interesting thing. It seems magical, but it's not really so magical. What he's saying there is that without story, right, without your mind having the idea of a past and a future, which is generated by mind, where is there a cause? Where is there a cause? And if we go into Sri Nisargadatta's teachings, about these, not Nisargadatta, but Eckhart Tolle's things about the practice of now. That's what his whole focus is staying in this moment and realizing that this moment is not on a continuum, that this moment has always been, and it will always be, that we right now are sitting in the same moment that Jesus occupied, that Buddha occupied, that Ramakrishna occupied, that we are not in a different moment, that this isness, this divinity, this God, the moment, always is perfect, in harmony, balanced, and one. And that it takes your mind to project a cause to it, and the cause that you project is going to be arbitrary based on the amount of information that you have, and dependent upon where you set your boundaries. Without boundaries, without a beginning and an end, a place where you stop thinking beyond. If you don't have that boundary, then you realize that everything is a cause and everything is an effect simultaneously, right? That really there is no cause and effect. Everything is both simultaneously always. But if you put your boundaries on, saying we're just going to measure from here to here, then within that boundary, within that limit, you can determine or create a cause and an effect. But if you broaden out your boundaries, your idea of cause and effect is going to change. And this is quite a wonderful thing to meditate on, because it's one of those things that gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you think about it. Yesterday I was with a group of folks and we were just hanging out and kind of talking about weird things. And they asked me what I thought about the world. What is the state of the world? What was my opinion of the state of the world? And, I first of all, I love the fact that they would think that I had one. But the other thing is what's the real answer to that? What do you think of when you talk about the state of the world? You don't. I told them, I said, I don't know a single thing about the state of the world. What I know is opinions that people are sharing about the state of the world, because when you think about what is the state of the world, you think about, oh, what about Israel? Well, you don't know anything about Israel. All you know is what somebody on the television has shared about what they think about Israel or what they're witnessing in Israel. I said, the world that I know, I said, I looked around the room and I said, this is my world. And what do I know of it? I know that we're at peace. I know that we're seeking for a truth. I know that we're enjoying each other's company. I said, this is the world that Mother has given to me at this moment. And so in this world, my responsibility is to you, to show you love, to encourage you, to be open and honest and a person of integrity in your company. I said, and so our world is what is the limits of mind that Mother has given us to exist in at the moment. And that if we take our idea of the world out of other people's hands, which means stop listening to the opinions being presented to you by faces on a machine, and start paying attention to the world that Mother has put you in. Start paying attention to the boundaries of the space that you occupy, seemingly. And here is your duty. You don't have a duty to Israel, to Palestine, to all of these imaginary places. And I say imaginary not in the sense that I don't believe they exist, but imaginary in the sense that I don't know that they exist at this moment. You know, that I have no evidence of them. So it's in a sense, well, we'd say, oh, well, that's chosen ignorance. Well, it's not chosen ignorance. It's certainly an ignorance, a limitation, but everything that we think is a limitation and a chosen ignorance. And so our worldview really should stay in the world that Mother has given us. Because if you live within that boundary, you're empowered. You're empowered to change. You're empowered to effect. You're empowered to manifest a beautiful thing that will make a difference. And that will do almost everything necessary for alleviating a lot of the stress and a lot of the anger and a lot of the frustration that we endure, because we're always thinking about a world that's beyond our reach, beyond our power, beyond our authority, and beyond our ability to touch. And so this is that idea of the boundary, of your knowledge. This world is about not just change, but it's also about ignorance. It's about having a very small playpen within which you can operate. You look at a child. I like that idea of a playpen. Actually, you can run with that even, that the mother puts you in a playpen. And, if you sit in that playpen and you sit there and mope and are unhappy because of the nature of what's going on at IBM or some random thing outside the window, what kind of child is that? There's a mental illness there. But for the child that just like, oh, okay, well, this is my playpen, this is my world, let me play with my fuzzy soccer ball, let me chew on my rubber duck, whatever it is, you carry on within the limit within which you've been placed. And there's a lot of suffering that is alleviated from accepting your reality where you are and doing your very best to be free in that reality, to manifest your infinite love, to manifest your infinite wisdom, and not to tie up in the mind all these different ideas of what the world is and what you need to do about it. And oh my God, everything's good. I hear this so much these days. Everybody's talking about, oh, the world, look at the condition that it's in. It's coming to an end. Things are getting so terrible. And I'm like, you just haven't been alive long enough. This happens over and over and over and over again. This is the state of the world. We went through World War I. Do you think those people were thinking, oh, what a great world we live in? Look at how delightful it is. Then we hit World War II, and everybody's like, oh God, here we go again. And then there's Vietnam, and then there's Iran, and then there's Kuwait, and then there's all of these. This is the nature of ignorance. This is the way that it's the dog's curly tail. So what do you do in that? Well, you let go of your ego and the thought that you can change anything, because there is no need to change anything. The Divine Mother of pure love has put us all in the situation that best services our transcendence. that best services our sharpening and knowing. And it's all happening within the context of a dream. And so there's an unreality to it. Now, I hesitate to put too much emphasis on that because I don't want people to start doing nothing in the world, because that's not the point. The point is, wherever you are, be there and emulate your nature. You will find joy and bliss and contentment and a fulfilled life if you accept the boundaries of your reality and not emulate. Is it emulate? I don't think that's what I mean. You manifest, just like your body right now is manifesting 98.6 degrees without you having to do anything for that. In that same way, you should manifest pure love without having to do anything, because it's what your nature is. You don't have to do something extra for that to happen. What you have to do is stop the calculation of the mind that prevents you from doing that. The jealousies, the hatreds, the stories that you tell, the shyness that's called, but being shy is just as much an egotistical response as being flamboyant. It's all a decision. And if you just don't get into the mind and do from mind, you'll stay out of trouble. Most of your vices require an initial investment of doership. You have to purposely step into them. You have to purposely start doing something that leads to them. And so if you are able to stay in that space of non-doership, which is not doing anything, but not planning and coming up with a desired result that then inspires an action, you don't want to go into that whole process. So if you can stay out of that process and just see and experience what is with you right at this moment, right? If you can manage to do that, then you're free from all of that other delusion that's causing you to be depressed or causing you to see the world in a negative way or causing fear or anxiety about your future, all of these different things. And so all of this is wrapped up into this idea. There is no cause and effect, right? The world is, and you dwell in it without resistance, picking up your moment and manifesting your love, manifesting your wisdom within it. And that's where peace and tranquility come into play, come into being. When you can do that, and that can happen in any circumstance. That not my favorite little story, but that little story I always tell, I think it was Viktor Frankl, who talks about that in the concentration camps. I'll just remind you, even though I do it quite regularly, with that, I need to come up with a new set of stories. So I'm going to have to go on a long retreat sometime and get some new things from Mother. But that he said, that the way that he survived in that camp, he said, I didn't think about my past because it was too painful. And he said, I didn't think about my future because I wasn't sure I had one. He says, so I stayed present and decided to alleviate the suffering of my fellow inmates to the best of my ability. And he said, that's how I kept my sanity, and that's how I survived the camps. He talks about some of the specifics that he did. When somebody was sick in those camps, they didn't get any help. And if they couldn't get up to go get food, nobody brought them food because everybody was just given just a very small amount for themselves. But he took it upon himself to notice who was sick, and then to try, and if he couldn't get everybody else to share a portion of theirs with that person, he would share his with that person. And so you see, even in the worst of circumstances, we see one of the experiencers of one of the most horrible set of conditions that you could come up with was able to live in a transcendent state about it by forgetting past, forgetting future, accepting the moment with non-resistance, and manifesting their nature, manifesting love, alleviating suffering to the best of their ability. And that is the secret, one of the secrets to life, to being, to existing, to navigating this world. So everything is uncaused. The world has no cause. Questioner. I am not inquiring about the causes that led to the creation of the world. Who has seen the creation of the world? It may be without a beginning, always existing, but I am talking of the world. I take the world to exist somehow. It contains so many things. Surely there must have a cause or several causes. Maharaj, once you create for yourself a world in time and space governed by causality, you are bound to search for and find causes for everything. You put the question and you impose an answer. A very interesting thing. Now, what's he talking about here? He says, once you create for yourself, all right? So who's the creator? You, right? Because we say again and again and again, we are not living in a world. We are living in a mind, okay? And this mind, this world of yours, this mind of yours, you have created. You have put together your explanation of it. You have put together your description of it. You have arranged the things in it that you want. This moment that you inhabit is the sum total of all of your desires and aversions put together. You've created this moment. If you don't like this moment, it's a good time to sit down and reflect on what are your desires and what are your aversions that led to it, right? Because this, we know that that he's talking about this mind world because you've created it in time and space. Where is time? Time is a part of mind, and you can experience that. You can know that. If you get the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, Betty Edwards is an artist. She gives you these exercises to slip into right brain. And right brain is not linear and not time oriented. And she says you can have that experience of sitting there and drawing a picture, and suddenly you look at the clock and realize that 2 hours has gone by and you had no experience of that as time. It just, boom, suddenly it was done. If you have a great meditation, if you're that lucky, you can have a meditation sometimes where you sit down and you go into your meditation and then you open your left eye and peek at the clock and it's already over. You've already done your hour and you're like, wow, I want all my meditations to be like that. That was fantastic. So we can see that time is of the mind. Time is a rate of change. And so it requires changing. It requires the stirred up thought. If your mind doesn't have stirred up thought, doesn't have successive change of thoughts, time does not exist for you. You do not experience the passage of time. So you've created for yourself in a world in time and space. Space is also of the mind. How do you know that? Well, where do you think you're walking around when you dream? Right? You can create an entire universe in your dream. You can see a mountain that's 150 miles away, but how far away is that mountain really from you? It's between your ears. It's not 150 miles at all. So you see, space is of the mind, governed by causality. That means that you are the ones that come up with your explanations for how everything happens. And that is Maya, right? Because what happens is the mind takes a slice of time, calls it the moment, and it stores it in memory. And then it takes another slice of time and it compares it to the one that's in memory. Sri Nisargadatta is going to tell us at some point that those two slices of the moment have absolutely nothing in common. Every atom in the universe is different in those two slices than they were yeah, they're just different to both those slices. That's all I'm saying. And so there's nothing to match up, but your mind will create a story to link those two slices of the moment. And you say, how could that be possible? Well, go to the movies. It's happening right there in front of you. You're getting one still frame, then you're getting another still frame that's completely different. And your mind links the two together and comes up with a sense of causality and creates motion where there is no motion, creates change where there is no change, creates a story where there is no story. There's just a series of still pictures, each one of them different from the previous one. You see, so our mind creates this world and allows us to inhabit it. And we used, in order to navigate that world in our ignorance, we've created ideas of causation, ideas of space, ideas of causation. You are bound to search for and find causes in everything. Yes, if you use the mind, you are bound to use the methods of the mind, the tools of the mind. If you run around the world with just a hammer, you have to learn how to use a hammer for everything. And so you start interpreting the world through hammer. It's the same thing. If you're given a mind and you buy into it as yourself, then you're bound to use the tools of the mind to describe the world. Your entire universe that you've created has been created out of only 5 pieces of information. Here comes Tom. You're only got 5 pieces of information. Have you ever really just sat and thought about that? That you've created an entire universe with just 5 pieces of information. Do you really think that there's only 5 pieces of information out there? Taste, touch, hearing, smelling, and whatever one I missed. Do we really know? Do we really think that's it? Well, we know it's not it, right? Because we've created machinery that can detect, say, for instance, UV light that the eyes can't see, So we can create instruments that can measure other forms of information that exist, but our mind doesn't have access to them because the mind doesn't have the equipment to accept anything more than 5 inputs. You bought a computer with only 5 ports on it. That's all you get. You've done an amazing thing with it, I have to say. The complexity of our universe is pretty incredible. But understand the nature of the tool. And that's why we want to be able to step outside of mind so that we can see the limitations of our perspectives and understand that it's not sufficient for knowing our nature. And that is why we go for a life of stillness. We're looking for that inner quiet, because without the mind limiting our perspective, without the mind telling us its conclusions based on the 5 pieces of information, we become aware of an infinity that is significantly bigger, significantly deeper, and significantly more fulfilling for us. All right, the questioner goes on. He says, my question is very simple. I see all kinds of things, and I understand that each must have a cause or a number of causes. You say they are uncaused from your point of view, but to you, nothing has being, and therefore the question of causation does not arise. Yet you seem to admit the existence of things, but deny them causation. This is what I cannot grasp. Once you accept the existence of things, why reject their causes? Maharaj, I see only consciousness and know everything to be but consciousness, as you know the picture on the cinema screen to be but light. Right? Now, this is an interesting thing right here, because this is what I was talking about. I don't know, not everybody was there, but before the class, I was kind of talking about this kind of thought experiment. We'll call it a thought experiment. I don't know what to call it actually, but I was sharing that the other day, day before yesterday, somewhere not too far back there, I have this idea that I had a good meditation, and in that good meditation, I had kind of sat for a little bit, kind of at the edge of my mind, sort of sitting on the banks of the pond of my time, kind of dipping my feet in there, but watching and observing and seeing it quite clearly as something separate from myself. And I felt as if I had a glass box in front of my face that had a 3-dimensional world in it. The universe actually was in that little box, but I was outside the glass, just kind of peering into it. So, and that image stayed with me, and I had to drive down to Laguna Niguel, And so on the way down there, I'm driving along, and I'm returning to my meditation from the morning, not thinking about it, but trying to go back into that kind of observant state, and managed to do it. And what I find very exciting about these things is that as we grow, what happens, you come to a new place. Like, you'll see your glass box of the universe in front of you, and you'll know yourself to be a watcher of that universe, and you'll feel that separation. The thing that's really cool is that with each step forward that you make like that, suddenly a whole garden of implications arises, and you understand a whole bunch of residual truths just because you've noticed one. You've come to grok or own one of them, and with that one come up when you pull up a plant in the garden, and you accidentally pull up a whole bunch of stuff in the same pull. It's kind of like that. There's a lot of understanding that we get when we just come to one realization, one understanding of something, not the grand realization, but a realization of a subset. That the worldview automatically changes for you. And why do I say that? I say that because things like this require us to know that when he says that he sees only consciousness and know everything to be but consciousness, the guy in the question makes some assumptions about the teacher that would limit his ability to understand what the teacher was saying. He says in here, you seem to admit the existence of things and yet deny them causation. Sri Nisargadatta would never admit the existence of things. All objects have an end, but no beginning, right? Maya has an end, but no beginning. And why is that important? Because it teaches you something very fundamental about Maya. If it had a beginning, you could actually say it existed. It comes into existence, but it doesn't come into existence. It's a wrong seeing. It's a misunderstanding. So it has no beginning, right? It's like asking the snake and the rope. Let's take the easy one. You go into the snake and the rope. You see that snake and you say, hey, when did that snake begin? And the person next to you looks at you like you're a nutcase. What snake? What snake do you think has a beginning? There's no snake there. And then as soon as he says that to you with an incredulous look on his face, you look back and you're like, oh, it's a rope. So the snake had an ending. That snake that you thought was there disappears, has its ending, but that snake never had a beginning because it had no existence. So that's why they talk of Maya, of having no beginning, but having an ending. We come to the realization that we have a wrong perspective, a wrong understanding, a wrong knowing about the nature of the universe. And as soon as we have a realization, the return to self, the illusion stops. It has an end for you, but it never had a beginning. It was always a wrong assumption. So when Nisargadatta is seeing, he's seeing a box, of consciousness. He's aware only of the consciousness. It's like if you're in a dream and you know that you're dreaming, you might see the illusion. You'll see the dream, but you won't be afraid of it. You won't need to interact with it. You won't need to run from the gang that's chasing you behind because you know of its non-existence. So you're seeing consciousness. You're seeing a dream. You know it's all mind stuff. And you can translate that into this world because Thakur tells you that in this mind, in this world, everything is mind. This world is made of mind stuff in the same way that a dream is made of mind stuff, right? And what allows you to see it all? The light of consciousness. And so most of us have created an idea of light of consciousness, but thinking we really don't know what that means. But in fact, you experience it all the time and are in fact experiencing it right now. And you say, how is that? And I say, when you dream, your eyes are closed, you're in a dark room, you're on a pillow, but in your dream, it's daytime and the sun is shining. What is that light that is illuminating your world in your dream? Your mind has never seen light. That has never, for a healthy person, someone who hasn't had their cranium split open on an operating table or some other horrible way, there's never been a ray of light within your mind. Never, not even one ray. And so that's our condition right now. So you're looking around the room, you're like, what are you talking about? Look how it's all light in here. And we've had this conversation so many times, but until we realize God, we have to keep having it. You're not seeing light right now. You're seeing the mind symbol of light, right? And that which is allowing that symbol of light to emanate awareness and emanate your world, light up your world, that is the light of consciousness. And what do we know about consciousness? We know that consciousness is pure love. And where did I get that from? I got that from Eckhart Tolle. Well, not that light is consciousness, but the fact that Eckhart Tolle's realization was light and love were the same thing, right? That light and love are the same thing. Because the light that you assume is a light, a physical thing, is not. It is a manifestation of the light of consciousness, which is illuminating your whole world. And so Sri Nisargadatta, being enlightened, is aware of that at all times. He understands, I'm not looking at objects. Just like when you're watching a movie, you know that you're watching a movie. You're not actually seeing a living room, with Sharon Stone throwing a cupcake against the wall. You're not seeing that. You're seeing light going through a film, going through a residue that's causing a color on a white reflective screen. That's what you're actually seeing, And so you have a direct experience of the light of consciousness. It's not hidden from you. You've just misinterpreted it. So understand that the light in this room is the love of God, the light of consciousness illuminating your world for you. And that is a wonderful way to know that you are always in the embrace of the Divine Mother. Here I'm bringing the Divine Mother and God right into the middle of our Gyanak discussion. The light of the universe you experience is the love of God, the light of consciousness, illuminating your world for you. And if you feel alone and you feel broken and you feel old and you feel forgotten and you feel separate from everything, sit down and turn the light on and enjoy the embrace of the light of consciousness. See it as it is, not as you imagine it to be. Which, I can hear the arguments now, but I would be imagining that it was the love of God. I see that it's just light. It's like, what do they say about Maya? They say that's the first thing that we learn about Maya is that up is down and down is up. Maya is the opposite of the truth. I see only consciousness and know everything to be but consciousness, as you know the picture on the cinema screen to be but light. Questioner, still the movements of light have a cause. See, he can't let go. Light of consciousness, he's not getting it. He's thinking that light is an object, that light is light is a thing out there, and it's got to have a beginning and an end, even though it inhabits the same moment always. It has no past and no future. He's still projecting. You see where all of our questions come from. Our questions just all keep sprouting out of wrong assumptions. And that is the hypnotization. When you make an assumption that you know something that you don't know, or you draw a boundary that cuts out what you don't know from what you do know, you've set up a delusion. You've set up a situation in which you cannot perceive truth anymore because you've chosen a non-existent place to stand to describe what you're looking at. And it's always going to be a problem. That's why we want silence inside. We don't want any assumptions. We don't want any wrong conclusions. We want to see it as it is without definition. Let the world tell you what it is. Let your experience tell you what it is. Don't let your mind tell you what it is. That's what we're trying to accomplish, so that that which is obvious can become apparent, in the words of Swami Tattvamayananda. So he says, still, the movements of light have a cause, Maharaj. The light does not move at all. Okay. You know very well that the movement is illusory, a sequence of interceptions and colorings in the film. What moves is the film, which is the mind, right? So there is no movement. There is no movement. What is moving is the mind, right? Because you get one still frame, you get the next still frame. What creates the movement in there? The mind. The mind is that movement between still frames. And that's the nature of the universe. You are constantly taking slices of time and putting them in memory. And every time this new slice, the mind takes it and starts comparing it to the previous slice. And it says, oh, this has changed, this has changed, this has changed. But there is no change because there's no relationship. One is memory and one is reality. And you're comparing the two and producing movement because you are bound to create an explanation, to create a cause and an effect. You are bound to assume movement because you've left the moment and you're comparing two snapshots of memory. You're no longer present. You're no longer in the isness because the isness never changes. The moment is always unchanging. Every frame of the movie is unchanging. The questioner, this does not make the picture causeless. The film is there, and the actors with the technicians, the director, the producer, the various manufacturers. The world is governed by causality. Everything is interlinked. Maharaj. Now, see, it's interesting there because Maharaj is going to deal with it in a very different way. But if someone were to say to me, make this point with me, I say, you're not looking at the film anymore. You know, when you're bringing in the producer and you're bringing in the projector, then you're bringing in God and you're bringing in the angels, you're bringing in this whole thing. And we're not talking about the nature of the movie anymore. He says, you know, that that he uses that to explain causation. But see, in the movie, what are you seeing? You're saying you're watching, let's say you're watching an ox cart go across the screen. Is there an ox cart there? Are you watching an ox cart? No. You're watching a little couple lines of brown against a background of blue that's in a different position in each frame. No matter what you think of it, it's not an ox cart until your mind says, hey, wow, I've seen something very much like that before. Give me a second. I'll rummage in my trunk of memory, pull it up. Oh, yeah, that's an ox cart. I've seen one of those. Right? And the person who's there in the room with them is like, silly. That's not an ox cart. That's a drawing. You know, that's a piece of film. That's a set of colors on the white screen. There's no ox cart there. So this is what he's talking about. You know, we see things, the mind picks up its experiences and projects them onto that object and gives it its meaning, gives it its definition, gives it its boundaries, and then fits it into its whole, its relative universe that it's created within by collecting things through the senses.
Swamiji,
yes.
Can I ask a question? So what is coming up for me as I'm hearing this is that because of the mind creates all the delusions. So mind is the cause of ignorance. So why do we have mind then? I don't know.
Well, first of all, we have to distinguish between pure mind and impure mind. Pure mind, there is no change. In pure mind, there's no assumptions. Pure mind and Brahman are the same, Ramakrishna says. What we're dealing with is when you throw a rock into the pond, it emulates a bunch of circles out from that, and each of those circles is a boundary. That's kind of our situation. We've tossed the stone of me and mine into the infinite ocean of Brahman, and it's caused a disturbance because that's not true. There is no me and mine, and so the mind reacts with waves. You know, it's been disturbed. Those waves are the world that we're talking about. Those waves are our Maya. Those waves are what happens when we take one without a second, and make ourselves only a part of that whole. We come up with an identity that's a perspective separate and apart from the whole. We believe that this is me and that is that. There's nothing else out there. So, now mind, so supermind is the container of Maya, it's the container of all things, but not the cause of it. The cause of Maya is your wrong assumption that you are separate and apart from the whole, that you are separate and apart from the senses which are creating objects for you. Right? So that's the cause of our ignorance. It's not that the mind causes ignorance. The mind contains a screen, a wonderful screen within which we can create anything we like, right? As the creator self, we can create, we can sustain, and we can destroy because we are that. And we do it within the playground of the mind, where anything can be created, anything can be sustained, and anything can be destroyed. But in truth, in purity, it's when you turn off the movie, right? When you turn off the movie and turn on the lights in the theater and send everybody home, what remains? The white screen. And what is the white screen? The white screen is every movie you've ever seen. It can be anything. It can have any movie played on it. It doesn't care. It's completely separate from the movie. And so mind is that. Mind is a white screen. Pure mind is white screen. And it can play any movie that you want it to play. And every one of us is playing our favorite movie on our own private segment of mind, the individuated mind, right? And so the mind's not the cause. Ignorance is from within our impure mind. Ignorance is the cause of what we experience, what we see, where we've individualized things that had no individuality. We've limited things that had no limit. We've made finite things that had no, that were naturally infinite, undefined. Did that build some good confusion?
No, that's good. Thank you.
All right. All right. So he was saying here that everything has a cause, that the world is governed by causality. Everything is interlinked, as our questioner is saying. Maharaj says, well, of course, everything is interlinked. And therefore, follow this, because this is a great point. Everything is interlinked, which means there's lines of relationship between everything, right? Therefore, everything has numberless causes. Because you can this, like I'm looking at a lamp sitting here on this desk. All right. The lamp implies the desk. It's linked to the desk. The desk implies the floor. The floor implies the room. The room implies the building. The building implies the Vedanta Society. The Vedanta Society implies the Hollywood Dell. The Hollywood Dell implies Freeway 101. Freeway 101 implies Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara implies an airplane to Boulder, Colorado. Boulder, Colorado implies snow. You see, it's like if you follow the links, you can pick anything in the world and make it the cause of anything else in the world. The mind can do that. Why? Because all of it's true. But the mind will only pick one thing to be true and disregard the rest of it. And that's our trouble. That's our trouble, right? It keeps us from knowing. It's like that time that I was trying to find out that one thing that doesn't change, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and I go to Maharaj. Maharaj says nothing in the world that doesn't change, right? Because that's the way I perceived it. I was like, there's nothing. I couldn't find anything that doesn't change. And then he says to me, did you consider that which was looking? Boom. Wow. That's unbelievable. It was right there, not in front of me, and that was the problem. It couldn't be objectified. It was the me itself. And so this is what we're trying to get to, is this understanding that we don't live in a boundaried self where we're going to go looking for God as an object in a world and achieve within time-space causation a day in the future which is bright and rosy because we'll have our realization on that day and then everything will be perfect. No, this moment will always be the same. This moment will be always be the same, but our perception of this moment is changeable because we're looking through the mind at it. We're watching the movie. But this moment actually is never changing. It always is. As soon as we realize that we're watching the movie and that we're not in the movie, we come to understand that the movie is an illusion. Nothing is changing. Nothing is actually happening. And then we understand that it was us that assumed the happenings, that we assumed and used the mind and the tools of the mind to explain an infinity that was one without a second. All right. So everything is interlinked. Everything is, that's why they call it a relative universe. That means everything is related to everything. You can draw lines between everything. What's that movie, 6 Degrees of Separation? There's an idea that all of us are connected within 6 degrees of relationship. You don't have to go through more than 6 people that you know until you find, not necessarily that you know. It's like you know somebody, and that somebody knows 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 you. There's a theory that you never have to go through more than 6 people to get to any other person in the 7 billion on the planet, right? Everything is interlinked. And because of that, everything could be called the cause of everything else. They're not separate. That's the butterfly effect, if you know that story as well. So, of course, everything is interlinked, and therefore everything has numberless causes. The entire universe contributes to the least thing. A thing is as it is because the world is as it is. You see, you deal in gold ornaments, and I in gold. Between the different ornaments, there is no causal relation. When you remelt an ornament to make another, there is no causal relationship between those two. The common factor is the gold. Now, think about this. What does everything become? Potting soil. Potting soil. Right now, some soil has been squashed together and created your body. When you fall over dead and they toss you in the ground somewhere or throw you in a fire pit somewhere, it goes back to the dirt. Some worm eats that dirt and suddenly it's a worm. That dirt becomes a worm. Then a fish eats that worm. Suddenly the worm becomes a fish. And then the fish becomes a bigger fish. And then that bigger fish becomes a Bengali. And so on it goes. But nothing is as it seems. We don't deal in objects and change. We're interested in the dirt. We want to see the truth of the matter, that it is the dirt that has become everything. That's not Vedanta. That's that's a metaphor. Just so there's no confusion. We're just saying, like what he's saying here, that it is consciousness, right? Because you're not actually, like when I say, I'm not looking at this lamp. It's not a lamp. I'm looking at a print of consciousness, a reflection of consciousness within mind that my mind has separated out from the rest and called it a lamp and forgotten that it's just part of a dream of which everything is mind. Between the different ornaments, there is no causal relationship. When you remelt an ornament to make another, or take that clump of dirt, there is no causal relationship between the two. The common factor is the gold, but you cannot say gold is the cause. It cannot be called a cause, for it causes nothing by itself. It is reflected in the mind as I am, as existence, as the ornament's particular name and shape. Yet all is only gold. Everything's only mind. In the same way, reality makes everything possible, and yet nothing that makes a thing what it is, its name and form, comes from reality, right? That means that's where we get the non-beginningness. Nothing that makes a thing what it is, its name and form, comes from reality, right? It's all part of the delusion. Nothing that's happening in that movie comes from reality. It's all a movie, and I'll remind you that the fun part of that is that you are actually the movie, right? We've talked about that. If you go watch a series of still figures move along on the screen, right? It's you that creates humans and houses and cars and everything out of the points of light on that screen. It's your mind that says, hey, that's a woman. Well, that's not no woman. There's not, if you go up there and try to touch a woman, you're not going to touch a woman. You're going to touch a screen, right? And that, so it's not a woman, but your mind will say, oh, there's a woman. And they say, oh, there's a man, right? And where's it getting that information from? From your own mind, projecting on the light on the screen. Your mind is projecting meaning onto the light on the screen. Then you see the man and the woman and they're holding hands. You say they're holding hands, but again, it's just an arrangement of light. And then what does the mind do? It gives you the next piece of the movie. Oh, they're in a relationship. And then once you've got that, the mind has created the idea of a relationship. Then it's going to go look through your library of relationships. And it's like, oh, this is a loving relationship. And so all of a sudden within you come up all the feelings of what a loving relationship is. And you project that on the movie. You see, so the movie is just color, just light on a white screen. The movie is being pulled out of you. You are projecting the movie. You're doing all the work. They should pay you to go to the theater. They're just putting light on the screen. You're creating a movie by having your mind project its meanings and its assumptions on light on a screen and telling you a resultant story from it. And this is the world that we live in. That's what you're doing at this very moment. Because you're not seeing me. You're seeing a computer screen. All right. But why worry so much about causation? He's asking. This is the Sri Nisargadatta asking the questioner. Why are you so worried so much about causation? What do causes matter? When things themselves are transient, let come what comes and let go what goes. Why catch hold of things and inquire about their causes? This is wonderful. Because we talked about this, right, in our meditation. This is really cool. If you can accept this, there's an amazing amount of wonder available to you. That when you're meditating, we do the instructions non-resistance, right? And don't identify with the thought. Let the thought arise, let it comes into its existence, and let it fall out of existence. Now, marry that with the truth that everything is a thought, because you're in a dream, right? Everything is made of mind. So every object in this world is just a thought of an object. It's not the object itself, and actually there is no object there. And that also is not a matter of faith. It's a matter of investigation. Ask any scientist, you study that object enough, you're going to realize that object is by and large space. That there's as much space between the elements of an atom as there are between the planets in the solar system. And that were you small enough, you could walk right through this planet and this world without touching a single thing. It's energy. Energy and matter can't really be distinguished. Light as a wave and light as a particle is yes, it's both. Which one is it? It's both. It can be matter, a particle, it can be a wave. No form, just a wave. You see, so we find that the nature of the universe really is nothingness. There is no there in the material world, because in truth, it's mind. That's what you're experiencing. And the way that we deal with meditation, with just non-resistance, letting things rise and let them fall, is indicative of the way we should deal with the world. Let the experience of this moment come, rise, come into being, and go out of being, attached to nothing. What happens if you attach to nothing? You have no memory. If you have no memory, you have no wrong seeing of the moment. If you have no wrong seeing of the moment, you have no desire. If you have no desire, you have no future. Okay. If you have no past, no future, and understand the non seeing, you have one eternal moment, the self, with no boundary. And you won't have to think and learn all of that. You will just have to accept this one principle, and the rest of that will be obvious to you. Nobody will have to teach you anything more of the universe. As soon as you know this truth to be true, just like I was talking earlier about that experience of the glass box, which really is probably very unclear at this point. And I talked about all the residual knowledge, all of the implications of it that were immediately apparent to me when I accepted that to be true. And so that's the nature of realization. And that's not to say that I had a realization, but it was a dinky realization. It was dinky samadhi. Dinky samadhi anybody can experience. It's just having a strong thought about something for a moment. So this dinky samadhi is not the thing itself, but it takes you a micro step forward into knowing the reality. But what you do is when you have that dinky samadhi, all of the residual truths become apparent to you. You don't have to go learn everything individually, because ultimately we get to an infinite knowledge that's spontaneously available to us in the moment. It's 9:03. Wow, look at that. Okay, that's a good place to stop right there. So let me